Welcome to the 510th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome, and thanks for listening. Well, long play is in the books. Long play was a 55K / because long play, for those of you old enough to know what a vinyl record looks like, the time long play, and it's 33 1/3 minutes long. I ended up doing 33.7. We'll talk about that a little later. But first, a word from our registered dietitian regarding National Nutrition Month. So we thought we'd kick every episode this month off with a little nutrition advice from our registered dietitian, Addie. Thanks for listening. March is Nutrition Month, and as a part of Nutrition Month, I have our favorite registered dietitian, Addie Majnaric. So welcome, Addie.
Hey, howdy, hey, everybody. Happy National Nutrition Month.
Yeah, so I finished my 50K, which is really 33 1/3, but it ended up being 33.7. And what am I going to do with my protein needs?
What are you going to do? Panic.
How will I recover?
Absolute panic. No, you're going to get them easily in your meals, and depending on your activity level, maybe in some snacks or potentially some supplements, but you're going to get them and you're not going to worry about it, but you're also not going to get an astronomical amount. Time to hop on my soapbox. If you watch, I forget if it was the Today Show or Good Morning America, they had a health special. It was either last week or the week before that I sent this to you, that was recommending to adults to be getting upwards of, 160 grams of protein a day. It was astronomical. And then, recently I saw another recommendation for this. And then most recently we've had a few members question advice given to them, whether it be at gyms or that friends or family have seen that you need like 1.5 grams per pound or these very high levels to meet your protein needs. So we were going to kick this week of National Nutrition Month off with a little chat on protein and what it is that you actually need, and where to get some good ideas from. So we're going to do a little math first. So you're going to take your weight in pounds and we're going to convert it to kilograms. You're just going to do that by dividing it by 2.2. Obviously, you know how to do this. Doctor.
Got it.
Care to share with the class?
54.5 kilograms.
54.5. Oh boy. All right. So after everybody's done that, and I'm talking about adults, children are a little bit different, right? But the average healthy adult can adequately meet their needs by multiplying their weight in kilograms by 0.8 to 1.0. Okay. Average healthy adult. This is if you are of a normal BMI with no comorbidities indicating that you might need to lose a few lbs. You are there. If you are not in this category, if you are someone who is overweight or underweight, so you're out of that normal BMI range, which is 18.9 to 24.9. There's a lot of BMI calculators out there. You're putting in your height and weight. That's all that it is. If you're outside of that range, you're not necessarily going to be using what you currently weigh at this point in time. Predominantly, I work with clients who are working for weight loss, but I do have some that are working towards weight gain if they're in that underweight category. there's two things you can do to get a number that you're going to work with. So you can either find a weight that falls within a normal BMI for your height, that is a goal weight for you, or you can just do a easy estimated ideal body weight. That for women is you're going to take 100 pounds for if you're 5 foot tall, and you're going to stop there. If you're for every inch over 5 feet tall for a woman, you're going to add 5 pounds to that. So 5'1", 105, 5'2", 110. So it's 110 pounds for a 5'2" woman as an ideal body weight. Is that a target I think you need to hit and stick to it strategically? No, but it's a number that we're going to utilize, because with health and these calorie estimates and what you are estimating that your actual intake is, it is all an estimate. But this is going to help us get a good number to start with. For men, you're going to start with 105 pounds for 5 foot and add 6 pounds for every inch above, or 6 pounds subtracted for every inch below. And that would be, I forgot to mention earlier, it's 5 pounds subtracted for every inch below 5 feet tall for women. So, okay. So either choosing a weight in pounds that's in your normal BMI range, or calculating that ideal body weight. There's calculators online. You don't have to do the math like I just did. But anyway, we know that you, doctor, mother dearest, are within the normal BMI range. You're a strong, ultra woman. Hoorah. So we're taking that 54.5 grams, and we're going to look at some things here. So if you were just an average adult, I would say we could easily have you, doing that 0.8. So let's do that.
40.
So 50, let's just say 55 grams. Let's just make it a nice round number.
54.
Times, I know you're 54.5, but I'm going to put you 55.
I know, but I did the math. It's 43.6. 0.8.
What is your, no. What is your weight in kilograms?
54.5.
54.5. Let's not jump to the next step. Multiply that by 0.8, that's 44 grams. That is so doable within 2 meals. But you're a high-level athlete. You are putting on some serious mileage on the road. You're also increasing your resting metabolic rate because you have added in a substantial amount of strength and conditioning. And we're looking to add muscle strength and mass and recovery for you. So really that 0.8, or even multiplying, obviously 54 times 1 is 54, isn't what I would say for you, what I would recommend. So if someone is in an active training cycle, average adult, you are going to want to bump that up to really about 1.1, 1.2. So 1.2 times 55 for you would still only be 66 grams. So it's not an astronomical amount. Now you can get more of that in. That's no problem. And when you're doing it with plant-based proteins, you're not adding in cholesterol, excess fats, especially those omega-6s, because we're not doing it through a ton of nuts, because we know those are only 20% fat, or 20% protein, 80% fat. We're going to do them from good quality plant-based protein sources, which we'll get to in a second. But 66 grams is not that bad. Now you are, again, in a high mileage training cycle. So I would even venture to say that you could go a little over that. But that would be my minimum target for you. And we know through working with individuals who have to log their food and being human ourselves, that typically when you are calculating your intake, you're going to undercut what you are actually eating. Everybody does it. So if you can at least at minimum hit those targets, you are absolutely meeting your needs. She just waved her snacks at me. Now there's different people who are going to need different amounts. So if you are pregnant, you're going to need at least 1.1 grams per kilogram a day. If you are breastfeeding, you're going to need about 1.3 grams per kilogram a day. Toddlers, like I mentioned, have a little bit different. They need about 1.05 grams per kilogram per day. Children and adolescent, it varies as they age, but need about 0.85 to 0.95 grams per kilogram per day. It's very attainable for our kids to get that. Seniors, we have a natural loss of muscle tone that's happening. Unless we use it, we lose it, folks. And that's why we are big on activity here. But we also need to eat accordingly. So seniors are going to need anywhere from 1 to 1.3 grams per kilogram per day. This is spaced out throughout your day. Now, gone is the thought that you can only absorb 20 grams in a setting. Now we're seeing that you really can do a little bit more than that. But really, you're going to spread this out throughout your day so your body can naturally absorb it. And we're going to get what we need, because we know too much of anything is not good. Because if we overconsume protein, like these, I'm sure, lovely individuals are recommending on the news, you are going to be requiring your waste management organs, your liver and kidneys, to do a lot of extra work to clean up that nitrogen waste that is broken down and not used. Over time, that can be quite damaging. Also, excess protein consumed is stored as fat mass. So you cannot chug down your protein shakes and sit on your couch and expect to get big biceps. It don't work, unfortunately. So we got to get to moving those muscles and providing them with adequate protein. Do not be worried about this concept of complete proteins when eating plant-based sources. We know that the body combines what it needs from multiple meals throughout the day to get those amino acids it needs, those building blocks to restore any tissues that have been damaged either through exercise or through hypertrophy style training where you're trying to grow your muscle size. We gather what we need throughout the day, so we don't need to worry about plant-based protein sources not being complete. We know that has been debunked. But let's talk about some plant-based protein sources, shall we?
We shall.
We shall. What's our favorite plant-based milk? Pop quiz. Huh? Soy. Soy. We love soy. Organic, unsweetened soy. Excellent. High five. Protein source. Soy. All we want is for it to be organic and unsweetened. Silk has a great option, especially if you have kids, because it's fortified. But there is a West Soy brand. There may be others out there. My only stipulation is organic and unsweetened. It is great to cook with, to throw in your coffee, to bake with, but even just give to your kids. So after nursing in the Dulaney Majnaric household, everybody is switched over to what I love. My pediatrician we've got a new pediatrician. She called it the house milk of choice, the house milk. And so we're introducing soy milk to Cece. That's what Caleb's been on. He's growing and developing wonderfully. It does provide some good healthy fats. And again, it's fortified if you get it that way, and it's perfect. Soy can also be eaten in the form of the edamame or tofu or tempeh. You also have all the beans and lentils that you can imagine under the sun. And these are where we're getting a big portion of our protein sources. But we also know from looking at my sourdough bread queen over here that a good quality organic wheat actually provides a good source of protein. So they're not just those nasty carbs that they want us to avoid. You're also getting a protein from a little bit of other things that you eat. Broccoli per weight is very high. White potatoes have a complete amino acid profile, not to mention a great source of complex carbohydrates for replenishing that muscle glycogen that you have burnt up last weekend. And also a high level of vitamin C, because who doesn't want to boost that immune system? But let's look at some quantities, because I know we're all interested in the numbers. Mm-hmm. So, on my handy dandy chart here, a cup of black beans is around 14 grams of protein, only 240 calories. Pinto beans, 12 grams. Chickpeas, 12 grams for a cup. Kidney beans, 14. A great northern beans, 17. When you look at silken tofu, is lower per ounce than extra firm, or excuse me, per package. Look at these 16 to 14 ounce packages. Extra firm, 1/3 of those 14 ounce packages is going to be about 12 grams of protein. Lentils in 1 cup cooked is 18 grams. And these are all providing, other than the tofu, you're getting a little fiber, but the pinto beans and the black beans and your lentils, everything there, you're also getting some fiber involved. So one target is protein, but another target I want you to think about is 40 grams or more of fiber. And we're going to talk about that next week. Spoiler. But this week, let's focus on the protein. Edamame, get the frozen, throw it on your salads, pack it in your kids' lunches, one of their side dishes, have it as a snack. If you like avocado toast, you should try blending your avocado with edamame beans and your seasonings, lime juice and your seasonings of choice to make a high protein avocado toast or spread or guac even. But like I said, we're getting some from other areas too. Those great omega-3 fatty acid sources that we're wanting you to get from whole foods, not oils and things. Chia seeds, 3 tablespoons, 5 grams protein. Flaxseed, 2 tablespoons, about 4 grams of protein, are providing you with, again, additional intake of protein. Hemp seeds are a little higher, but also contribute to your omega-3 fatty acids for the day. There's great things out there like lentil and chickpea-based pastas. Quinoa, of all the grains, is going to be on a little bit of a higher side, but even rice, yes, rice, another one of those stinky carbohydrates that they want us to not eat, it also has some protein in it. So if you eat a well-balanced diet, I'm telling you to choose a green, to choose a color, to choose a protein source, and to choose a good quality whole grain or potato, and you're eating 3 rounded out meals a day, maybe an additional snack or 2 depending on your activity level and your personal needs, you will easily be able to meet an acceptable amount of protein for the day that's going to support muscle maintenance, depending on your activity type, muscle growth, lean body tissue, without wrecking your kidneys. Thank you. This is my TED Talk.
Very good. Very good. I think that I am covering that area. We came home from the race and we had some tofu, cauliflower, and potatoes. And the next day we had a tofu scramble for breakfast, sushi salad for lunch, and dinner we did burritos with beef and rice. So that was a pretty good post-race day meal.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I have been since I've been training. I've been actually doing a tablespoon or a little bit, but I would say heaping of chia and hemp seed in the morning, and then I put my soy milk on top of that. Not a whole lot, like a maybe quarter cup, just to microwave it into a somewhat of a porridge and have my fruit with that. Then my sourdough bread is my typical breakfast. But I've been trying to have, I do have a bean source with my lunch salad. So it could be the edamame, it could be whatever's left over, bean dish, or soups. You know, when we make soups, we put beans in them typically. We'll talk next week about perhaps St. Patrick's Day and how you get around that maybe in our protein sources. But we have a good outcome for that. So yeah. It's very doable. I have never counted my protein. I feel like I recover very well. We're recording this on Thursday. The race was on Saturday. I'm back to running and don't have any soreness. So, I feel like I'm recovering good. I feel like I'm stronger than I was doing the strength training. So, it's good. And we don't get energy from protein. We get energy from carbohydrates and fat. And depending on your heart rate, you break down fat or carbohydrates. So when people say they're tired, it's not because of lack of protein. It's usually lack of one of those, usually carbohydrates, because people try to skimp So proteins, that's not where you see the protein. You see the protein in your muscle recovery and overall general wellness. So thank you very much, registered dietitian Majnaric, and we'll check in with you next week.
Well, thank you. I look forward to it, and have a happy rest of your day.
Thank you. So there you have it. Tonight I had a dish that we like, that we make, plant-based spinach pilaf, tofu, and I just quick saute that in some spices, garam masala, garlic, a little cayenne pepper, and then I make the sauce all in the Vitamix, and it's about a half a bag of spinach, or one of the little boxes, and a large can of diced tomatoes. I use the no salt added, and then a big knob of ginger, 3 or 4 cloves of garlic, hot pepper. Usually I just chop up a jalapeno, and some cumin, coriander, garam masala. Blend that all up into some wonderful sauce. Put that over the tofu and serve it over rice. Voila, very quick meal. Heats up nice. Flavors are wonderful. So back to the long play, 33 and a third, but if you do what I did, as I tell you later, it ends up being about 33.7. So this race was put on by Andy Kroom, who I had on the podcast, Andy Kroom Matthews. The Kroom's his middle name because he has a lot of races in that area. It's located in Brooksville, Florida, and crosses over and back and forth the Kroom Trail, which is a wonderful bike trail. It goes for a long, long way. It's a Rails to Trail project up in the Brooksville area. But this starts at the Ridgemore Trailhead of the Withlacoochee State Forest. And the Withlacoochee State Forest is 164,073 acres. It's about 50 miles north of Tampa, if you're not familiar with Brooksville. It is the third largest state park in Florida, and it was acquired in 1936 by the United States government and turned over to Florida in 1938. Withlacoochee means Crooked River, and there's one of the little trails within it called the Crooked River Trail that goes along the green, kind of swampy lands and cypress trees. And we see the 70-mile river along that swampy area. It's called the Green Swamp River. It goes from Polk County to the Gulf of America at Yankeetown, and I'm not lying about any of that. The Withlacoochee River winds about 13 miles through that area of the forest. And the way the race course was set up is somewhat of a loop. There was a straight area, then a little bit of a lollipop so that they could add that 1/3 of a mile on, and then a circle around the area. So it was really pretty. There was areas where we went by the river. There was cypress and longleaf pines, oaks, maples, bald cypress, southern magnolia, gum trees, hickory trees. I actually saw hickory nuts on the ground, and I knew they were hickory nuts because when I was young, my grandmother in the area, there was a hickory tree, and she used to gather them. If you've ever seen them, they're very, very small. They are good, but they're tremendously hard little nuts to process. But there were wildflowers, little yellow wildflowers, some goldenrod, some thistle. And this state park was named the 10 coolest places you've never been in North America. And I have to agree. I was running with a lady, and I said, when we started running trails, we went all the way to Utah to run the Zion as our first 50K, and then we kind of worked our way back, and we just started in the last year running trails in Florida, and they're absolutely beautiful. Who knew? We ran on parts of the Florida Scenic Trail, and the Great Florida Birding and Wildlife Trail. The Florida Scenic Trail actually goes from all the way down in the Everglades all the way up to Big Cypress Preserve in Gulf Island, which is up near Pensacola. So it's quite a large trail. This course was different from any course we've done in Florida so far, in that there was a wide, different, a lot of different scenery. Again, we ran through little boggy areas where there were the cypress trees, and then you were running kind of through open areas that were wooded. And it kind of reminded me up in West Virginia when I used to go squirrel hunting with my dad, that there would be this forest. And when I say trail, it's a bit of a path, but if you weren't paying attention, that path kind of would blend into the rest of the environment a lot of the course, which became a little bit of a problem. During the pre-race meeting, Andy noted that there had been some trail bandits that had taken some of the flags down or moved them, and he had tried to go through and replace them on this 33-mile loop, but he wasn't entirely sure who was doing it, when was doing it, and what we might see. The trail marks, if you're a Boy Scout, I guess you know that the trails are blazed on the trees with a color usually. So there'll be a marker at the start of a trail and say follow the yellow trail or the blue trail, and their blazes are little paint slashes on trees. And so he told us we would be following the blue trail for a little bit in the beginning, and then we would, as long as we saw the yellow or orange blazes on the trail, we were most likely on the right path. And that he would put little pink or orange flags on the trees about every 1/10 of a mile, or a branch or something, and so we could follow those. Seemed like a no-brainer. So there were aid stations out on the course at mile 6, 6.1, and then 11, and then at the kind of midway point, which was around 18. And if you looked or read anything about the course, they talked about in the beginning there would be some sugar sand, and that's basically like sand you see on the beach. I've talked about that with another race. So kind of soft sand is kind of hard to run in. I wasn't sure how much of that there was going to be, but they said there was some, so I was kind of prepared mentally for it. And then there were actually going to be hills as the further you got away, because if you've ever been up in the Ocala area, Florida starts to get kind of hilly. So the further you out, then you get hills. And so the biggest climbs were out near that, say, 16 to 18 mile area that you could expect hills. And I also noticed when we started the race that we were running downhill a little bit at the start. So mental note, on the way back, we're going to have to run uphill. We didn't have to do that lollipop out into the boggy area on the way back. So when I was doing that, it was very pretty, but it's like, okay, I'm glad we don't have to do this again. At one point, there was a kind of muddy, boggy area, not near like Long Haul, but a little short area, and you could go over an old log if you wanted to try to go over it. And I started there, and I thought about my balance class, but I also saw like the wood was really rotten, so I elected to hit the mud for a little bit, which wasn't bad, and got across that. Then you ran into, a wooded area and running along the trail, in and out of trees, a little bit of roots and things, but not terrible. Ran around a little lake, could look down and see the dark water. Probably could have seen an alligator had one stopped to look for an alligator, but I decided that I would look on the trail for an alligator, and as long as the alligator wasn't on the trail, we were all good. And then we got into that a couple areas where we would cross over things to go to a different part of the trail, and that's my first area of problems. Someone had moved the flags down the road, so the flags were going both directions. And so I kind of stopped. I started to go down where I thought it was, and then I didn't see a flag, and I got a little bit concerned, and I saw these flags going the other direction, so I went the other direction for a little bit. So I kind of zigzagged a little bit before I decided that going straight was the way to go. And then I saw somebody, and I was relieved. And then you kind of wait for a 1/10 of a mile, and you see another flag, and it's like, okay. Unfortunately, that happened to me again at an area where it kind of went through a rocky, narrow passage that seemed like something Andy would do, but didn't necessarily seem part of the trail, and there weren't any markers. So you had to run a little bit before you got out of that. And so I kind of zigzagged a little bit, should I or shouldn't I, and wasted a little bit of time there. But nevertheless, the trail was marked pretty good on the way out, and hit the hills, and they were kind of fun, and my energy was actually good. The plan for this race was to kind of push the pace a little bit and see what I had. my ankle's been doing really good. When I do Leadville this summer, I'm going to have a pace that's quicker to make the cutoffs and adjust for the altitude. So I wanted to kind of see where my fitness level was. So I was willing to push the pace a little bit, even if I blew up in the end a little bit and had to take it slower, just to see what kind of pace I could hold on the trails. I train the majority, 99% of the time, I guess, on roads. I go out my door in the morning and I run side streets. And it's a lot different running side streets than it is trail with uneven ground routes, making turns and twisting and watching for flags and everything. So you slow down easily a minute per mile once you hit the trails versus on the pavement, depending on how technical and how many curves and everything. So learning to run in that environment and relax is a whole different ballgame. So I was thankful for the opportunity to do it and wanted to push my pace a little bit. So I got through the first aid station. We were allowed to have 2 drop bags. We're allowed to have a drop bag at 6 miles and a drop bag at 18 miles. And when I say drop bag, you could put whatever you wanted in a reasonable size sack of sorts. And because we don't eat a whole lot of what's offered usually, I just carried a few more. I put a couple gels and some gnarly, which is the drink mix that I use. And I put enough in the one at the 6.1 so I could have it on the way back, based on the mileage and how long I thought it would take me. And then at mile 18, I had enough to resupply my gels and gnarly to get me back to the 6.1, or it would have been 28-mile marker. So going out, I just stopped it when I got to the aid station, had some Coke. I had a square of peanut butter and jelly. They were pretty small. One of the other aid stations, I had some Coke and a couple Oreos. Oreos worked this time. And got to the mile, and I carried as far as hydration goes, I actually I wore a vest and had a bladder, and so that's a water pouch in the back of the vest for non-runners that had about 1.5 liters of water in it. And then I had 2 15-ounce flasks in the front of the vest that had my drinks in it. So the vest is, it adds 5 or 6 pounds to the weight you're carrying. Again, good practice for upcoming races. I could have got away without the bladder in this race, but I actually wanted to carry the extra weight as a training tool. So when I got to mile 18, I refilled the bladder, and they filled it all the way up. So I had closer to 1.7 liters for the way back, and got my gnarly, got my drop bag, got my stash. I had a vegan waffle cookie, as well as some sports beans, which are like jelly beans with a little extra electrolytes, and the gels and the gnarly. And off I went. And so that was mile 18. And because we had done a lot of climbing, some of that was downhill, so that was good. And I was still keeping my pace pretty good and felt pretty good about it. Didn't really have much in the way of lows. My quads felt good. My ankle felt wonderful. I was so thankful as I was running that my ankle was feeling good, and kept going on and came around and down through the woods, and got to about mile 25 and started to get into a little bit of a winding wooded area with some roots and everything. But it was, kind of soft, packed dirt. And I just kind of said to myself, this is nice, and I think I can maintain a pretty good pace going in. I don't think I'm going to have to walk. And the next thing I knew, I was on the ground. Tripped over something, didn't see it coming, landed on my hip pretty hard, enough that I felt my hip move in my body, and thinking, oh my, did I really do it? Could this be the end of my race? Da 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 da. You know how you first go down and you kind of assess the situation. It was a little bit sandy, and I kind of got up pretty quick, and hurt a little bit, but I definitely wasn't broken. So started walking to kind of shake it off. And my Garmin everybody's Garmin does, but have an alarm that if you have an incident, basically a jolt to the ground, it notifies your emergency contact, which happened to be Michael. And by the time I got myself off the ground and figured out which button to shut the alarm off, it had already called Michael. And so he called me and he says, did you fall down? And I said, yes, I did. I'm walking it off. And he said, well, great. He says, I'm just up about a quarter mile ahead of you at the aid station, and I'll wait for you when we can walk it in. Because at that point I wasn't sure, was I going to be walking or running or what was happening. But I said, okay. And so we got to the aid station, was really just about a quarter mile up the road. And by the time I got to the aid station, I was starting to jog again, and I felt pretty good. And I met Michael, and we took off kind of at a walk-run. And then gradually I started running again. I felt better running, jogging than I would have walking. And we separated out and went on our merry ways. So that was, mile 25. The next aid station where our drop bag was should be 28. And I came into that, and I was kind of starting to slow a little bit, but still running, walking, maybe doing back to my 4-minute run, 1-minute walk, or 30 seconds run, or 30 seconds walk. And I was doing still good with my fluids. And I went into the aid station. I was happy to see, and I was kind of joking with the people at the aid station. I had a cup of Coke and 2 Oreos, and I took off without my drop bag. So I did not have my nutrition for the last 6 miles in. I had what I had on me. So thank goodness I had filled that bladder all the way up at 18, so I had plenty of water. I still had some gnarly, so I hadn't drank as much as I thought I would from that. And I had probably 1 gel in my waffle. And it's like, wow. And I didn't notice that I forgot my drop bag goodies. I was probably, 3/4 of a mile away from so it was too far to go back, because at that point I didn't want to add any more mileage on. And I kind of had a time goal that I wanted to hit. At first it was 7, and then it became 7:30 with the turnarounds. And so I was like, well, I want to try to certainly want to get under 8 hours if I can, and try to keep this pace up. So I don't really want to go back. I did call Michael sheepishly and ask for forgiveness for separating from him, and asking if he wouldn't pick up my drop bag and bring it with him as he went by. He already had it. Apparently he was looking to see what I took, and there wasn't anything missing out of it, so he knew I forgot it. And anyway, so I managed to get on in, ate my waffle, drained the last bit of gnarly, and ate my last gel with about 2 or 3 miles to go. The other funny part about it is when I fell down at mile 25, because I was fiddling with my watch, I turned my watch off. So I knew I was at mile 25 because I talked to him, but then I restarted my watch, so I knew I had to go 33 1/3. And if you've ever run any distance, you know that math gets fuzzy at that point. So it took me 10 tries to subtract 33.3 from 28 or 25, and come up with, and then a pace and figure out where I was. And so I thought I was going to be a little bit long. I wasn't entirely sure how long I was going to be. I was hoping it was going to be less than 34. I thought it was, but I wasn't entirely sure. And when I got down to a section, all of a sudden I start seeing blue blazes on the trees instead of the orange and the yellow, and I panicked again. And I stopped and walked a little bit. And then I kind of remember, it's like, okay, and I didn't even notice them on the way out. I was just looking at flags. That, okay, Andy said we were going to have to see blue blazes for part of the course, so I'm hoping that this is part of it. So I went a little bit further, saw a flag, and so then I started really watching every 1/10 of a mile to make sure I saw a flag. And, I was hoping every turn was going to be the finish line. It kept being one more turn. Finally, there was a sign to the finish line to the right. I thought there would be one more turn. There was a couple more turns because Andy likes to do things like that. And finished at 8 hours. So kind of 8 hours on the dot. Ankle great. It was stiff, sore. I pushed the pace. I was happy with the pace I did running. The longer time was for falling down, brushing off, getting lost a little bit. So it wasn't that bad. And all in all, it was, a really good experience. I wore a new brand of Hoka shoes called the Hoka Challengers. I got a little half size bigger. My big toenails survived, but my second and third toenails did not survive, and I had a pretty bad blister on my third toe. underneath what was just beginning to be a toenail. So it was kind of gnarly, and then not gnarly to drink, but gnarly to look at. And then I had a little bit of a blister forming on the outside of my big toe, which was something I don't usually get. So if I were going any longer, I would have had to stop and address that. I would have literally had to tape my big toe. I would have had to have popped that blister and taped the third toe to try to get that to settle down. But it certainly wouldn't be a race-ending issue. But it was a little nasty after the race, once everything settles down. The funny thing with toe blisters, and they're not on the skin of your toe. These blisters are underneath the toenail part, so they kind of raise up the toenail, and it causes pressure. And when you pop them and relieve the pressure, it really takes the pain away. The next time the pain comes is when you kind of release the toenail and it pops off, and there's just kind of raw skin under there, and that's very, very tender. And that typically happens at night, and it typically throbs. I guess when you put your feet up, you can feel your heartbeat in your toenails, or your toes. There's no toenails. So that's a little bit nasty, but it only lasted, a little bit. And I actually got up in the middle of the night and put a Band-Aid and some ointment on my toenails, and that was better. A little hard to put your toe socks on with Band-Aids on, and so the walk the next day, I actually didn't do any walking for the most part on Sunday. Monday took the dogs for a walk. Tuesday did a little bit of running. Wednesday did a little bit of running. Today was a walk day, and then tomorrow will be a run. So I'm actually feeling quite good. Toes feel fine now that the skin is kind of, not throbbing anymore. It was a good day. So now back to start training for the next race, which will be the Skunk Ape 50 mile. Michael informed me, he said, I got some bad news to tell you about your podcast. And he said, you've been saying 50K, and it's actually a 50 mile. And I knew that, but I guess subconsciously I was hoping for 50K, so I don't know. But overall, I was quite happy with the way it turned out. No worse for wear as far as falling down. I didn't even have a bruise on my hip. You might have a little bit of a sore spot and a little bit of kink in certain ways, but nothing as it could be. So as I tell my patients, when they fall down and you don't break anything, I pass my bone density test. So I'm very, very thankful for that. I don't know what to tell you. It seems like I get cocky and think everything's okay, and that's when I fall down. So it should be a note to self to be a little bit more careful. But, it just comes back to we all fall down, and we have to get back up and shake it off. So being afraid of falling sometimes makes it worse because you're so tentative that you fall anyway. So better just to go through it, and it'll be okay. One lesson that I learned, or one thing that happened that I guess I didn't realize during the race, but it was more after, was that I had the idea that I wanted to run most of the race and not walk it in. I wanted to not finish this race walking or struggling. In my head, if I could jog it in, even though it wouldn't be a fast pace. As I started, if I could jog and my ankle would let me run, it was going to be a good sign that everything was getting better for me. When I had the fall, I had the opportunity to walk. Michael gave me an out to say, if you want to walk it in, you can. I'll walk it in with you. And when I started to walk, I actually had a little bit more tightening of my ankle as I was walking, because you walk, I was our paces were different. He walks faster than I do when to walk run, and so the extra striding kind of made me more uncomfortable, and that's one of the reasons why we separated, that I started to jog in. But I wanted to jog it in, and so I was happy that I stuck to that plan, because I could have justified walking because I fell down and I just want to make sure I'm okay. But I pushed it a little bit there, and I'm good for that because I had a plan and I still stuck to it. I learned a lesson that I got to pay more attention. If there's a drop bag to get that was for sure. And the other thing, I was doing crazy math, and my running coach brought up, did that help you? And I kind of thought it did, because it was motivating me, because I wanted to stay under a certain time period. So I was trying to see what my minute mile pace was, and if I was running a 15-minute pace, for example, then I could run 4 miles in an hour. And if I ran over that, it would be more than that. If I ran less than that, if I ran 13-minute pace, it would be blank, And so I was doing the math on if I did that for 6 miles, when would I finish, adding on to what time I think it was. Again, my watch stopped and then I started it, so I was having to do some crazy math, 25 plus whatever it was to go in. So it was using a lot of mental energy for me to try to do my fuzzy math. And your brain does burn a lot of glucose when you're, trying to do math, especially if you're trying to do math at the same time you're running. So I probably, used a little bit more energy than I needed to, trying to figure out what the time was. And the question is, if I didn't have a watch, what would I have done? Because I made the decision to run anyway, and I was going to do the best that I can to finish the best time that I could. So did the time actually matter to me? Most likely not, but it kind of let me run, and again, it kind of made me run scared a little bit to try to get it done quicker. And get it over with, so to speak. But that's probably not the best philosophy as far as to run away, to be running from something as opposed to just trying to maintain and focus on my pace and the quality and my form and those things. But nevertheless, it all worked out, and I'm grateful for it. And on to training for the next race. I hope you found Addie's information helpful. There's a lot of misnomers out there about protein. I never count my protein. I might slip in a little bit more protein after a race just kind of to push it a little bit, but I try to eat a well-balanced plate, and everything takes care of it for itself. And like I said, I'm healing well. My legs are back to normal, and I'm starting to train again, so I feel really good about that. If you want to check in with us and get a consult from Addie, you can go on over to drdulaney.com and find out how you can join the membership. You can be a member of our practice and just talk to Addie and have access to everything on our website. Or you can have a coaching session from me and Addie every month. Or you can be a full member of our practice and have unlimited access to us. So go over to Dr. Dulaney and check it out. You can also have a $25 membership where you don't have to talk to any of us. You can just lurk on all our stuff we have to offer. Exercise, mobility class, nutrition class, lectures, recipes. So you can just pay $25 a month and get access to all that if you want to. Nevertheless, I am grateful that you listened. Share this podcast with your friends so we can get a wider audience, and talk to you next week, along with a little minute from Addie. Thanks.